I've noticed that as an adult, there's a lot of hobbies that have no upper limit on how much you can spend on them. Where if you're not too careful, you can do all of the acquiring and never get time to actually do the hobby itself. There's a variety of words used interchangeably throughout these acquisition hobbies. A rig, a stack, a setup, battle station, your gear. You could be talking about a guitarist's pedal board, a hiker's hiking equipment, or the products used in someone's skincare routine. It all fuels an online world of discussion, reviews, and analysis. And it's pretty compelling, whether it's makeup, peptides, gaming PCs, or those weird videos of oddly immaculate fridges where everything's been taken out of its original packaging and sorted into pristine, transparent plastic containers as if it's a vending machine or a fridge full of lab samples. People are watching this stuff. And it is interesting to know what other people who are doing your hobby are doing, to get some inspiration from them, to see what's available out there. I've definitely spent a lot of time looking at other people's bicycles and the way they've customised them for all different kinds of purposes and adventures. The same goes for cameras. Seeing someone's entire setup can be more useful than a traditional magazine-style review where each item is reviewed in isolation. You want to see how a real person uses something in the real world and how it interacts with all the other stuff that they use for this hobby. There are obviously some of these posts or videos that are still very product heavy, and many companies have leapt on this sort of media as a way just to sell their products. At its worst, it's just influencer marketing. But it's not all like that. For example, I use an open source piece of note-taking software called Obsidian, and everyone else who uses it would be furious at me calling it note-taking software, but that's beside the point. It's where I keep all my ideas and notes about this podcast. And as it's open source, it's completely free to use, and anyone can create add-ons and tweaks for it. As a result, there's a thriving subreddit where people are constantly sharing the different ways they've optimized Obsidian for their use, and the ways they've made it look completely different. One person added writing goals, word counts, and a book layout to use it to write their first book. Some add diagram drawing functions to help them revise for biology exams. Some just add their own fonts and styling and lovely pastel colours to make it look really inviting. I've added a couple of bits that work well for me. I've got a homepage that quickly shows me what podcast tasks need doing each month, and it gives me a standardised checklist to go through for each episode. But had I not torn myself away from the customization screen when I first downloaded Obsidian a year or so ago, I think I could still be customizing, tweaking, tinkering, and optimizing it now. It's the equivalent of spending all day hand drawing a very pretty revision timetable with color coordinated notes, and then never spending any time actually revising. You're thinking about things, but not actually doing the things. One thing I've not really seen people talking about is their attention setup. In this online world of bottomless scrolling and endless content, attention is a hot commodity. People talk about the attention economy, about no longer being able to focus, about wanting to claim their attention back. And people talk about the drastic measures they take to reclaim their attention, quitting social media, getting rid of their smartphone, abiding by super strict rules. And it can all feel a little bit like those My Routine videos where people claim they're getting up at 2 a.m, meditating, running a quick ultra marathon, and then drinking a smoothie made from berries grown in the garden of the Japanese emperor, while simultaneously reading a self-help book and listening to the Diary of a CEO podcast. It's unobtainable nonsense that either makes you laugh, feel bad about yourself, or both. So instead of doing that, I want to share my very fallible attempt at an attention setup, the ways I try and keep myself focused, and the ways that I fail. Perhaps it'll be interesting, perhaps it'll give you some ideas, perhaps it'll make you realise that you're way better at focusing than I am, and that you have a far better attention setup that you'd like to come on the podcast and share with me. Before diving into the specifics, I thought I'd actually start with the why. Why do I feel the need to have an attention setup, as I've only just started calling it? It probably sounds pretty self-evident. It's like saying, why do I need a fitness routine? The problems with our attention are so unanimously acknowledged that it's just obvious. But I would like to mention something specific that I noticed. I noticed that online distraction has become a default for me. If there's a quiet, empty moment in my day, I find that I now instinctually reach for my phone and dive into the online world, even if it's just checking my emails. And I don't like that being a default because it's often not even that good. I don't find myself really glad that I saw that email come in while I was on the loo, or that I quickly skim-read an article while I was waiting in a queue in a shop. I don't come out of that thinking, that was a really good use of my time. Conversely, when I actually had a moment alone with my thoughts, or to take in my surroundings, I enjoyed noticing things. I enjoyed the ideas that came into my head. I enjoyed having a moment for my brain to just slow down for a second. And I started paying attention to those moments, like sitting in the passenger seat at a petrol station while my girlfriend fills up the car. It's that twilighty time of night where even the lit-up supermarket signs take on a glowing cyberpunky quality. And I noticed that this petrol station doesn't even have a kiosk. No little shop to go and pay in with racks of pre-packaged pasties and fridges full of energy drinks. It's pay at pump only. No option for any human interaction. It's peculiar, a little unsettling. Maybe the complete automation of the process is adding to that cyberpunk feeling I noticed when looking at the distant lights. And I wouldn't have noticed any of that if I'd just whipped out my phone to check WhatsApp. So I'm going to start with the most common point of conversation. Screen time. How do I manage my screen time? Well, I spend a lot of time looking at a screen. My day job is exclusively screen-based, and a lot of my hobbies involve looking at screens. I don't view screen time itself as inherently bad. I'm not looking at the amount of time I'm spending on screens and explicitly trying to get that number down. I just want to spend that screen time doing things I actually want or need to do. I don't want that feeling of waking up with a hangover that I get if I've been mindlessly scrolling for an hour. That groggy guilt and regret as you surface back into the world. I was utterly exhausted yesterday after a busy few weeks, and I didn't really have the energy to do anything. I don't often feel like that at all, but I recognised that I wasn't going to get anything productive done, and I ended up spending about 6 hours playing video games. Something I haven't done in years. And I don't regret it at all, because I very deliberately decided that I wanted to play this game and that I needed a rest. And at the end of those 6 hours, I'd achieved exactly what I wanted. A restful day focusing on something I explicitly wanted to do. It couldn't be more different from mindlessly scrolling. So I've tried a few things to stop myself mindlessly scrolling on my phone. The first is simply deleting the apps I find distracting, like Instagram and Reddit. To a certain degree that worked with Reddit, as long as I also block the website version. It didn't work with Instagram, though, because there are other features built into it, like messages, that I want to check. And I do actually occasionally like seeing what my friends are doing. And I use it to post about this podcast and actually to investigate stories for this podcast. It's easy to forget that social media, for all its problems, is also quite useful sometimes. So it didn't take long for me to re-download Instagram, and then I was back at step one again. I tried a few apps that block it or limit my amount of time on it, but then I'd run into the same problem. My screen time was up, the app was locked, but I needed to use it for a legitimate purpose, like organising a podcast interview. So what did I do? Well, I'd just delete the locking app. And again, back to step one. But now I have got a solution. On my phone, I've got this app called ScreenZen. It's free and it's available on both iPhone and Android. And crucially, it doesn't just stop you looking at apps or websites that you don't want to be on. It's super customizable. So you can set time limits on apps, but you can also decide how easily you want to be able to bypass that block. So my setup at the moment is that for all social media, I have a 5-minute limit. 5 minutes is a reasonable amount of time to send a couple of messages or to have a quick scroll. But after those 5 minutes, ScreenZen pops up and asks me if I want to continue. And if I do, I have to do a minute of maths questions before the app unlocks again. And that's just enough time to break the spell of scrolling. It's enough to make me realise, actually, I don't want to be doing this. I should go and do something else. Or, if I'm actually doing something useful or enjoyable, I'll do those maths questions, and waiting a minute isn't particularly onerous. Sometimes I'd even find that I'm enjoying the maths problems more than I was enjoying the scrolling. The one-armed bandit gambling of endlessly scrolling isn't as satisfying as being told that you got some basic maths problems right. There's also a schedule feature, so you can decide that certain rules only apply at certain times or on certain days. For me, I've just got that set so that I can't watch YouTube after 10 p.m. because I'd rather spend that time reading. And maybe this sounds like I'm using parental controls on myself, and I guess I am. I'm trying to parent myself well. I'm not embarrassed to say that I need that. And if you like the sound of it, the link to ScreenZen will be in the show notes. In the past, I've also enjoyed the app Forest for periods of focus. You plant a little digital plant. You set how long you want your time limit to be, and then you lock your phone. And if you unlock your phone for more than 30 seconds during that time limit, your plant dies. But if you manage to avoid your phone for that time, the plant flourishes and it's added to your forest. And there's just something about that gamification that does actually work for me. Even though it's completely without consequence, I don't want that little tree to die. I guess it's like having a Tamagotchi or something. So those are the apps I use, but I'd also say I like having the attitude that my phone is mine and I can do what I like with it. And that means if there's an app that's annoying me with a load of notifications I don't want, then it can piss off because this is my phone. So learning how to disable notifications from specific apps is, in my opinion, one of the most useful things you can learn to do on your phone. I don't want to be endlessly pinged with marketing messages because I was forced to download a buggy app for a one-day event I went to. It's like spam. It should be easy to just block and delete it. And now that I take a zero-tolerance approach to bullshit notifications, I only get distracted by things I actually wanted to be notified about. I've tried to find something similar to ScreenZen for my desktop computer, but nothing quite like it seems to exist for free. So I either need to pay for something or wait until the desktop version of ScreenZen improves. But at the moment, I just use an extension called Stay Focused to block procrastination-y websites once I hit a certain time limit. But actually, there are some things you can do on desktop that you can't do on your phone. So you can block some of the most distracting elements of social media. I've got 4 browser extensions I use for this at the moment. See, 4. That's a proper stack, isn't it? The first is Newsfeed Eradicator. It works across multiple sites and it does exactly what it says. It eradicates the newsfeed. So I can go on a website and use its messaging features or look at a specific person's profile without being distracted by the endless scroll of that newsfeed. It just blanks it out. Everything else is still there. I've got it enabled across Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. It's particularly useful on LinkedIn because I never see anything I really want to see on LinkedIn. But everyone on there has got good enough engagement bait that it'll still catch my eye if I'm not careful. Then I've got Reddit Enhancer. It lets you decide what's on each Reddit page, so it's even more customizable than the newsfeed eradicator. I've just turned off the sidebars on both sides of the screen and the "you might also like" section at the bottom of every post. Basically all the bits that are designed to make you click through and stay on the site after looking at whatever you actually came to look at. And finally, there's Remove X For You tab. I don't look at X unless I need to investigate stuff for this podcast, but when I do, I never want to see the For You page, just full of bait that I don't want to be distracted by. And now it can't distract me. Again, I like that these extensions give me the feeling that this is my computer and I'll decide what I see on it, actually. All the links for those extensions, which work on Google Chrome and all the similar browsers, will be in the show notes. It's like when you, as someone who has always lived in the Midlands, are by the seaside and you want to make the most of being by the sea. So you have a little morning walk along it before heading home and you just listen to it. And then you stop and look at it. And because you don't live by the sea, you're still amazed at how bloody big it is, how beautiful it looks, and how admirably mad the people going for a 7 a.m. swim must be. God, it would be cool to have a boat, wouldn't it? You're listening to What's on Your Screen, which is a podcast all about the different ways we each use the internet. And if you're enjoying this episode, it'd be really lovely if you could subscribe to it or leave a review or a comment on it. And if you could give me a follow elsewhere so I can keep you up to date with all the latest episodes. All of the information on how to do that is on my website, which is www.mattwattsmakesdocs.com. And all the information on how to find that is also in the show notes. We've recently got a coffee table. Yep, that's my big technological solution to the attention deficit of the world. I wanted a big coffee table so we could put magazines and stuff on it. The idea being that if I just flop down on the sofa, if there's a physical magazine or something in easy reach, I'm more likely to pick that up and end up reading something I actually want to read instead of just whatever is most successful in snatching my attention on my phone. So far, it just means that there's a copy of Vice on the coffee table with a front cover featuring a picture of Michael Jackson and Jeffrey Epstein together, which makes my girlfriend quite uncomfortable. But I think the principle still stands. In fact, I think the principle also applies to using different devices. There's been a lot of talk in recent years about dumb phones. These neo-Luddites are handing in their iPhones and starting to use old Nokias instead. And that appeals to me. I love a bit of retro technology. I love the idea of returning to the era when the internet lived on the beige computer with the boxy screen in a communal living area. But for me, that would only really work if everyone else simultaneously decided to revert to that era. Otherwise, it would just be thoroughly impractical. So don't worry, I'm not about to tell you that the only virtuous option is to return to using a BlackBerry or a Sony Ericsson Walkman phone, as much as I would like to. But I am going to tell you that I've been attempting to return to my iPod. I love the design, I love owning my own music, I like curating my music library, I enjoyed tinkering with my iPod to install new flash storage and a big battery in it. It's the same thing as having a dumb phone, or the craze for old digital cameras from the noughties. Having a separate device for your music or for taking photos means having a device that hasn't been infected with an unquenchable thirst for your attention. It's not going to try and keep you looking at it for as long as possible. It's simply designed to do its job. And that's refreshing. It also means less time looking at your smartphone, less chance for you to be suckered into looking at something you don't really want to look at. But obviously, it does mean that more pocket real estate is taken up. So, I would recommend it if you already like the idea of having some retro tech on you and you don't mind wearing trousers with slightly bigger pockets. So like I say, I've got an iPod and I do have a separate camera too, but I think there are a couple of less common devices that I also use. A PSP and a synthesizer. The PSP is the PlayStation Portable, the elite handheld gaming console released in 2005. I've installed some custom software on mine, and I'm currently using it to play old Zelda Game Boy games, which sounds niche and nerdy because it is. But the same principle could apply to something newer like a Nintendo Switch, and it's the same idea as the magazines on the coffee table. If the PSP is lying around, I might pick it up, play a bit of Zelda, find the puzzles actually surprisingly intricate and satisfying, and have a pleasant half an hour of playing that, instead of a draining half hour of looking at slop and Doom on my phone. And I don't mean Doom the game, which I can play on the PSP as well. And the synthesizer, well, I could probably make the same very basic sounds I make on there for this podcast on a laptop using software I already own. But having it in a separate unit just makes me less likely to get distracted and makes it more likely that I'm going to get into that lovely flow state focus feeling. Because the synthesizer doesn't pop up and tell me that I could earn some points on booking.com if I just click now. It's like sitting at a level crossing on my bike, waiting for a train to pass, noticing the quirky looking charity shop across the road, having a look at the amount of gaffer tape being used to hold together the homemade e-bike that's pulled up next to me, thinking about how I would never go in that pub with the Sky Sports sign outside it. So the last thing is the thing that I didn't really want to talk about. I talked at the start about extreme or unrealistic solutions to this feeling that our attention is being sapped away against our wills. And I feel like setting rules is the epitome of that disciplinarian approach that is so unappealing when people talk about it. It's the same as people saying, well, just get up and go for a run at 6 a.m. It's all well and good in theory, but that doesn't help you develop the discipline or even the desire to do that. It sounds vile. And one of those rules when it comes to screen time and attention is always no phones in the bedroom. And I do follow that rule. But not because I'm incredibly disciplined. I just trick myself. It's like not going to the supermarket when you're hungry. I just don't have a charger for my phone in my room. It's easy to have the discipline to not have a phone charger in my room because I took that out in the daytime, and daytime me won't put a charger back in there, so I'm safe. I also know that it's going to be a real ball ache if I wake up and my phone's dead because there's no charger in the room, so I leave it downstairs when I go to bed. Daytime me is a slippery character. He's a trickster, but ultimately, he's got nighttime me's best interests at heart. The one other rule type thing was born out of another observation. I used to live in a flat in the middle of Nottingham, and my walk to work was about 7 minutes across the city centre to the lace market. One day, in my usual shambling morning lateness, I couldn't find my headphones and I had to walk to work without them, and I heard the clock on the council house chime 9 a.m. It was the first time I'd ever heard it. I'd been doing that commute every day for a year. Commute, it was a 7-minute walk, but you know what I mean. And I was always late, so I was always out when the clock chimed 9. And I'd never heard it, and that was weird to realise, that I was so switched off to my surroundings. Now, I don't walk to work anymore, but since then, my lunchtime walks are generally headphoneless. I think going for a walk and listening to a podcast or something after a morning of my head being filled with work, it was just overwhelming me. And it wasn't easy. Going out for a walk without headphones to begin with was kind of like exercising. It was painful at the start, and I had to be disciplined to begin with, telling myself that it would be good for me in the long run. And after a while, it did start feeling good. Like my brain was having a little bath after a sweaty morning of work. So once it started feeling good, it was easy to keep going with. So that's my current setup, my attention stack. Still find it difficult. I think my big thing at the moment is feeling the need to constantly stimulate my brain in that same way at home. Often just listening to podcasts. And don't get me wrong, I love a lot of podcasts, but occasionally I find myself listening to an always-on type podcast, one that releases every week or more than once a week, and I realise I'm just listening because it's there, not because I really want to. So that's the next thing I want to try and tackle, I think. But it's all constantly changing as the tech changes and as I change. So again, like exercise, it's more like a constant practice rather than a one and done solution. Hopefully some of that was interesting to you. I would really love to hear about your attention stack, what's working for you, what isn't, what you're struggling with. Send me an email, send me a voice note, send me an Instagram DM. All the details on how to do any of those things is in the show notes. And if you somehow aren't sick of listening to me wang on about stuff, why don't you check out the latest episode of Is This the New Internet? Which is a podcast that I recently guested on. And I had a lovely time chatting to Marv all about a lot of the subjects I've talked about here and my own approach to making things on the internet in 2026. So you can find that wherever you find podcasts. Just search for Is This the New Internet? And again, the link to that will be in the show notes. All right. Thank you for listening. And I'll see you in a month's time for the next episode. Goodbye.